I stare at my reflection in the mirror. Why am I doing this to myself? Losing my mind on a tiny error. I nearly left the real me on the shelf. No, 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 no. Don't lose who you are in the blur of the stars. Seeing is deceiving, dreaming is believing. It's okay not to be okay. Sometimes it's hard to follow your heart. Tears don't mean you're losing, everybody's bruising. Just be true to who you are.
My name is Shelby Anderson. I'm 19 years old and I have an eating disorder. I grew up the youngest of two older sisters and a twin brother, and so in my family I was basically just constantly compared to my twin brother, or I felt like I was always following in the footsteps of my two older sisters. And so it was academics, or it was sports, or it was always something. And so for me, I wanted to meet the expectations my parents set for me, and they set high ones. And so it was sports, I had to get a good time, or I had to beat the times that my sisters set in track. And if it was academics, I had to make sure that I got a better grade than my brother, or that I made the highest A possible in whatever it was. And so I always felt like I was constantly just being compared to something, and that whatever I did wasn't enough. And so I just kind of grew up with this mentality of trying to be the best at everything, and that was really hard because I felt like I was always letting someone down in whatever way, and that my parents, even if they said I was proud of you, like I always felt like there was something I could do better or more that would make them, be more proud of me. And so I guess I was always really insecure in that area of my life. And then, growing up, I'm tall, and I've always been tall, and I stood heads and shoulders above everybody, boys and girls included. And so I literally stuck out, and I always was really self-conscious of my height and insecure about that, even in elementary school. And then as it went on, growing up, I also became conscious of my weight and, how much I was eating. I had chubby cheeks for a really long time, and I was always insecure about those and nervous that people thought I was fat or not skinny enough or whatever it was. And so even in elementary school, I remember thinking, am I eating too much, or does that person think I'm fat, or just whatever it was. So I always have sort of had these insecurities rooted in my life. I distinctly remember the first time I ever really felt fat. And it was about 6th grade, and my second oldest sister had just gotten her wisdom teeth out, and so her cheeks were so big, and I just was laughing at her and calling her chipmunk's cheeks and making fun of her, and she looked at me dead in the face and was so serious and said, if you keep going the way you do, you're gonna end up just like this all the time. And I will always remember that and just thinking, wow, that hurt a lot. And then shortly after that, my family, my sisters and my brother started giving me a little nickname, and it was Chubs. I grew up with the nickname of Chubs. And that hurt a lot. And just for me, I started to have this mentality of, if my own family, the people who are by blood, supposed to love me, if they don't love me for my appearance or think I'm pretty, the people who are supposed to think that, who is? And my mentality sort of just shifted and thinking, maybe Chubbs was just a nickname and it was just a joke, but at the same time, I started to think there has to be some ounce of truth in it, and that no matter what anyone said, that there was truth in a joke, and that if someone made a comment about my appearance or something I was doing whatever it was because of the way I looked, and if it was a joke, if it was supposed to be a joke, I could find the seriousness in it. And in the back of my head, there's a little voice just going, they said that because part of it's true. And so my entire mentality just shifted. And so when I hear compliments now, someone could tell me that I am skinny, or that I am beautiful, or I am talented, I am whatever it is. And this little part of me just goes, no, I'm not. Because someone once, weeks, months, days, however long ago, told me, no, you're not. And I can remember the comments of, if you were skinnier, I'd bet he'd like you. Or, you're a little too tall. Or maybe if you didn't eat so much. Or, well, maybe you shouldn't have dessert today. And I just remember all of these little comments people have made about me, and my brain just can so quickly flash back to those and just send me spiraling into all of this doubt and insecurity. So there's sometimes those little comments about, how much I'm eating, or if I go back for seconds or something and someone makes a comment about it, that I instantly start doubting myself again. And then sometimes it's hearing a girl who I think is gorgeous and so skinny make a comment about, oh my gosh, I'm so fat. And I look at her and clearly I'm bigger than that girl is, and I instantly think, oh my gosh, if she thinks she's fat, what is she thinking about me? And I just start doubting myself all over again. And so I'm constantly just comparing myself to what people have said and what other people say about themselves, and continually feeling like I'm not measuring up. And then sometimes it's just not even the verbal comments that matter. It's my parents, maybe giving me a look about, them not being super proud of me, and I just get this feeling that they're disappointed. Or it's, maybe just getting left out of a group, and not getting invited to go to dinner, and then seeing the pictures on Instagram later and thinking, well, why didn't they invite me? And I instantly just think in the physical terms, and it's, oh, they didn't invite me because I look the way I do. And that triggers it a lot, of me needing to change myself because I wasn't included, or because I wasn't good enough for someone, or because someone made an actual comment about it. It's pretty obvious that my insecurities started at a really young age, but I think in middle school, that's when I really started to become pretty conscious of them and wanting to do something about it. And middle school is that time in your life when everyone's trying to figure out who they are, and whatever that means as a 13-year-old, who am I? And I knew that I wanted to be popular, and I knew I wanted a big group of friends. I wanted to feel loved. I wanted a guy to like me, and I wanted to have a boyfriend, whatever that meant in middle school. But I wanted that, and I didn't get it. And I constantly felt left out and neglected, and I just put that all on how I looked, because I knew that if I wanted to fit in, I could change something about myself, and the easiest thing for me to change was my physical appearance. And so at first it just started out really small, and just me maybe eating a little less, and watching my portions, or working a little harder, whatever sports practice I was doing. I was always athletic, so I always had something to keep me physically fit, and so I was never worried about gaining weight. It was just being satisfied with the way I looked in the moment. And then 7th grade rolls around, and I meet this girl, and I get to be really good friends with her, and she's popular, and she's pretty, and she cheered for the high school she was going to, and was the epitome of that girl, the it girl. And she was my friend, and so I felt really cool hanging out with her, and I wanted to be like her. And I find out about 2 months into our friendship that she has an eating disorder, and she's anorexic and bulimic. And it was working for her, and I saw that. And in my twisted logic, I just thought, if it's working for her, it's gonna work for me too. If maybe I try it, I could be more popular, or I could get the boy to notice me, or I'd have more friends, or I'd feel better about myself. And so my mom packed my lunch for school, through high school. So it was really easy for me to just pull out the bags at lunch maybe pick at them a little bit, but not actually eat them and just throw them away. And my mom would never think, oh, did she eat her lunch today? So I just started eating a little bit less. And no one really noticed, and I went under the radar. Maybe I lost a little bit of weight here and there because I was still eating at home. I was still eating at dinner. And so that's when I sort of started struggling with bulimia, and I was really unsatisfied with the way I looked, and I looked in the mirror every day and I sort of just hated myself, and I felt gross, and I felt like I could never be loved, and I felt unwanted, and I felt worthless. And so I took the next step, and I would start throwing up meals at home, and it wasn't every day, so maybe once or twice a week. But in those moments when I was not eating lunch or I was making myself throw up, I felt like I had control over my life, that this was this one area that I was complete and in total control of. And I was finally like figuring something out for myself. By the grace of God, I never got unhealthily skinny. One time at lunch, someone finally noticed, you're not eating anything. I went and told the guidance counselors, and I had to go into this meeting and sit with them and talk about it. And then I was under close watch, and so I had to start eating lunch again. And so that's when my anorexia sort of went away. But I started finding other ways, and my eating disorder started coming in other forms, and I started calorie counting. And I would eat a rice cake and celery sticks, and that was 75 calories, and I could burn that off in like an hour. And that was what I was eating. And that was a way that I restricted myself, and then I felt like I could still get the results I wanted and still maybe feel prettier without people being looking at me and like seeing that I was doing this. But unfortunately for me, it still wasn't working, and I still was really unpopular. And it sucked a lot. And I just started thinking, what can I do? Like, what is my problem? And I started getting really mad at myself for it. And then I found out this girl that I was friends with, she cut too, and she did self-harm. And I remember seeing the scars on her wrist once and just thinking, I'll never get there. That'll never be me. That's too much. I could never do that. And then I had my first panic attack, and that all just changed. And my panic attack wasn't even triggered by something about my appearance. I came home from school one day, and I think my mom made a comment about my room not being completely clean. And so I just went to my room and like slammed my door and was so angry and upset with myself that I can get good grades and I can serve in my church and I can do all of the sports things, but I still can't be good enough for my parents because my room's not clean. And I just started crying and getting really upset, and I just couldn't stop. And I felt my throat just like close in, and I couldn't breathe. And I started crying, and I couldn't stop, and I couldn't think straight. I just remember just lying on the floor of my room, just not knowing what to do. And in one of those moments, Haley's scars flashed across my head. And I thought, that's what I need to do. And so I cut for the first time. And it's really hard looking back and seeing where I got there and how I got there and remembering that moment because it wasn't the last time I ever did it. And, I wear a watch on my wrist, and I have a really great watch tan, but I have scars. And so I carry those scars every day, and I look at them, and I see my scars, and I'm reminded of where I was. And it didn't stop there. I got to the point where I really just hated myself. And I didn't want to live anymore. And I decided to write a letter. And I wrote a suicide note, and I really considered ending my life. And just thought of the ways I could do it. I could grab some pills from under my mom's medicine cabinet, or I could, cut a little deeper or a little more. I could drown myself in my bathtub. I thought of all of these little options of how I could do it. but I was always too scared to do it. But I wrote the notes, and I will always remember just finally getting that point of desperation of just not knowing what to do anymore and hating myself so much that I didn't see the point in living. I guess when I started cutting in middle school, a lot of my outward symptoms, I guess you could say, of my eating disorder sort of went away. I started to not starve myself as much. My bulimia almost completely just went away entirely. But then going back to high school and going through those 4 years of my life, a lot of those thoughts came back. The cutting went away and the self-harm went away, but my thoughts of not eating really came back strong, and they came back a lot. Because I had all of these things coming up, as high school, and it's, homecoming dances, and then you have your prom your senior year, and you have graduation and all of these things. And so senior year was when it got really hard. And I just kept thinking of all these things I had coming up that I wanted to look my best for. I wanted to make sure a boy asked me to prom, so I had to be skinny for him, and I wanted to, take really good graduation pictures, and I wanted to have a great senior summer and, get to go to the pool and the beach with all my friends and be confident in my bathing suit. And so all of those things started adding up, and I started freaking out and being like, do I look good enough for that? Am I ready for that? And so then I really started to get pretty intense with my eating disorder, I guess you could say. And I got out of school at 1, but I was there for lunch, so I could go to my lunch period and tell the people I ate with, oh, no, I'm just gonna eat at home. And when I got home, I could say, oh, I just ate at school. And so it was really, really easy for me to just not eat. And I was working a lot during the week, so I could say, oh, I ate at work, Mom, it's fine, I don't need to eat dinner. And so I was limiting myself to maybe 1 meal a day. And, I could drive, and I had control over what I was doing with my life a little bit, so I was working out a lot and going to the gym, or going to fitness classes, or just all of my sports practices, and running on my own, and just being really diligent. And during my senior year, in about a month, I think I ended up losing about 20-25 pounds over the course of a month. And I don't know how long I would have kept going with that. I was pretty into it, and I was starting to feel okay about myself. Not good, but okay. And people started noticing, have you lost weight? And my mom said, you're gonna just blow away in front of us. And, it felt really good to think people noticed the way I looked. So I got a little bit of an inflation in my ego from that. I felt better because someone just cared enough to notice, and that felt good. And then some girls I ate lunch with noticed and figured it out and ratted me out to my small group leaders. And I remember having to sit down with my small group leaders after church and them lecturing me and them saying, you know what, you're gonna tell your mom that you have an eating disorder by Thursday, because we're gonna call her and we're gonna talk to her. And I had to sit down and tell my mom that I had an eating disorder and that I've had one for 6 years. And that was really hard. But it felt good that she knew and she was aware. But with that, I wasn't allowed to starve myself anymore. I had to eat again. But I just went back to some of my old methods of restricting my calories, and I made a thinspiration wall, and I had pictures of the way I wanted to look on it, and I had little posters, stop giving up, if you're tired of starting over, stop giving up, what have you done today to earn it, and just all of these little things just pushing me to keep going. And even though I wasn't starving myself every day, I was still going through all of these motions that were still this really twisted mindset. And I still do that today, it's just it's a part of my identity. In a weird, twisted way, my eating disorder has been this one constant thing in my life. In terms of me just moving on and I guess getting better, It's really hard just because I don't want to burden anybody with this. I don't want anyone to feel like they have to carry this for me or with me because it's my problem. And so it's really hard just to not fake it. Faking it has always been the easy part, and it's easy for me to wear a mask and to not let anybody in and to just say I'm fine. You're not eating a lot today. Oh, I'm fine. You haven't said a lot today. I'm fine. And just shaking it off. Because when it comes down to it, I'm the only one that can get in my head and say, get over it. I'm the only one that can make myself get better. But it does help a lot to have people that love me, that are here for me. A big part of my healing has come from my faith. I'm a Christian, and I found a lot of healing in my faith in God. My small group at church never truly understood, but they tried really hard and were checking up on me or sending me Bible verses to remind me that God loved me and that I was precious to Him. One of my favorite Psalms in the Bible is Psalm 139. I have it on a mirror in my room when I get ready so I can see it, and it talks about how God made me and I'm precious to Him, and I read it every day, and I have to remind myself every single day, that I'm precious and that I'm worth it, and I don't have to please anybody else because I'm God's precious daughter, and that has been a really encouraging and helpful thing for me. But the hardest part is just waking up every day and having to choose for myself what I'm gonna believe. I can wake up and I can look in the mirror and say, you're hot, you've got this, you're pretty, Or I can wake up and look in the mirror and say, you're worthless and no one's gonna love you and you're ugly. And so I have good days and I have bad days, and sometimes I have really bad days, but sometimes I have really, really good days. And so it's constantly just a decision I have to make of what I'm gonna believe in. One time she's actually a therapist, she described it to me that an eating disorder is a lot like an addiction, that it is an addiction. And so in the same way that there's an alcoholic who struggles with his sobriety and not taking another drink, or in the same way that a drug addict has to decide not to take that one more hit, I have to decide every day if I'm gonna let my eating disorder be a part of my life. And, I still have that voice that tells me in my head that I'm not good enough, that no one's ever gonna love me, and that I'll never be enough for someone. But I also have found this voice that's telling me that I am enough, that someone will love me, that someone does love me, that it doesn't matter what they say, it doesn't matter if I feel insignificant, but there's a voice telling me that I'm enough. And that voice is getting really loud. It's getting louder every day, and that's really encouraging for me. I'm Shelby Anderson. I'm 19 years old, and I am beating my eating disorder.